Russell's already done half the introduction for me on our next speaker, because that's Tessa, is it Zirnsak? Yes, I got it right. That's excellent. Now, Tessa works as a project officer with Equally Well, but she's also doing her PhD currently with La Trobe, which is great. Russell also in his talk touched on the importance and the terrible rate still of smoking in people with severe mental illness, and something that we've really got to do something about. And Tessa's talk today is going to give us a little bit of feedback, qualitative feedback on some of the programs that you've been involved with. So I will pass over to Tessa and let her go for it.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. So I'm reporting on the qualitative findings of a trial called QuitLink. Now, I wasn't involved in the RCT. I'm primarily a qualitative researcher, but I did all of the analysis of I led the analysis of the qualitative interviews. And it was a really fantastic opportunity. People had really excellent things to report. As a consumer researcher, sometimes with smoking interventions, I can feel a little bit a bit concerned that they might be a little bit kind of sage on the stage instead of guide on the side. But I think that by kind of listening to these perspectives through this qualitative research, we're really able to kind of understand and capture what smoking interventions need to provide for consumers for them to have that real opportunity to quit, which everyone should have. So I kind of told you a little bit about why I think this matters already, but I think what we really found there's already some existing research, and I think that, I'm going to talk about it more as well, that people smoke for reasons beyond chemical addiction. So, and I'm going to share that with you as well. But the reason that this research is so important is because so often we focus on those, those alleviations of the chemical problem. So, through NRT, while neglecting what people are getting out of smoking from a kind of emotional or social, kind of like through those sort of pathways. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I think that that's really under-recognised and really at the heart of what people, might identify as their needs when they're quitting. We know that people with SMI or experiencing SMI are more likely to be smokers, but they're just as likely to want to or have made a quit attempt as anyone else who smokes. So the broader QuitLink trial was quite a big study where intervention participants were provided with one-on-one counselling and nicotine replacement therapy. And the control condition were provided with only publicly available resources. So they had access to Quitline, but with Quitline you get a different counsellor every time. In the intervention, they got the same counsellor every time. They got regular check-ins. Everyone had contact with a peer worker, but that was very brief. And everyone had access to NRT, although I think the intervention control had more access when the control condition just had kind of the standard 6 or 8 weeks. Then for the qualitative data, we interviewed participants at 2, 5 and 8 months. So at 2 months was the end of kind of the intervention period, and then 5 and 8 months were reflecting on that and kind of looking at progress since then. So the 8 months would be 6 months after the intervention, 5 would be 3 months after the intervention, and yeah. So I'm going to report on the 5 and 8 month time point. So those kinds of time points beyond the end of the trial, so where people were at sort of in the months after. We had a relatively small sample of only 28 participants, but very, very rich data. We also had very limited crossover, so only one participant did interviews at 5 and 8 months. So we can't say that this is a longitudinal study or that we can have longitudinal outcomes from this, but you can still kind of, there's still a lot in there that's kind of worth looking at. And I also think that, some of the barriers to participating in research might have played a part. This recruitment happened during COVID, but also, people who had relapsed might be less likely to talk to us because they might have felt like that they might get a hard time or, for maybe their own reasons. And then interviews were transcribed, and I did I led the thematic analysis with another consumer researcher and our boss. So that was really lovely. So, I pressed it twice. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, I think my slides got a little bit mixed up, so like everyone get ready for that. So one of the main things that we noticed that was different at 5 and 8 months, was that people had they had a different attribution for where the problem of smoking was. So at 2 months, people were more likely to kind of say, say things like, it's too hard because of COVID, or because I'm stressed at the moment, I can't do it. At 5 and 8 months, we saw more people saying, well, the problem is that I'm not determined. Or conversely, the thing that helped me this time was that I was able to draw on my inner resources. So what that kind of suggested to us is that people's internal resources were really, really important to the quit attempt, and that helping people to access those resources was paramount to being able to make and maintain a quit attempt. And I think this participant, so this was an intervention participant who had no change in their smoking status over the course of the trial. They said, but your mind's got to be in it. You know what I mean? It's not enough for someone to say, just quit today. You've got to be ready to quit. So another key thing that we identified was the impact of social relationships. So social relationships were both enablers and barriers to maintaining a quit attempt. Some people felt that, like this quote up here from the intervention group who did manage to cut down, that once you'd see a friend who smoked, that was it. But conversely, we did have some people say that, having active support and active encouragement from people in their lives did really help them to continue to make that quit attempt. So it seemed that these relationships had a significant role in terms of things like access and, and I guess being able to hold on to that continuity. Because a lot of people also said, and this is established in the literature, that once you have that first drag, when you've made a quit attempt, it's over. It's getting back on the horse is so challenging after you've had that initial setback. I think slides are out of order. That's fine. Okay, so we also found that clinicians were really significant in similar to the social relationships. So some people felt in our trial, that having clinicians that were supportive made a big difference. So one person, I was looking at the data this morning to kind of refresh. One person was saying that her doctor kind of, every so often would say, and how's the smoking going? Or how are you feeling about your smoking? And she didn't really feel ready to kind of make a quit attempt every time she was asked, but she knew, and she said this to us, she knew that when she was ready, she could go back and say that. When we had other people who kind of suggested that pushiness actually sort of, or being told that they should quit, actually put them off engaging with their clinician at all. And a lot of that, I think, had to do with feeling like they weren't understood, or feeling that clinician had a vision for them that wasn't consistent with their own vision for themselves. So this participant also said that their clinician was a bit ambivalent about their smoking. So I'm going to read it aloud. I love to read the quotes aloud. He had no concerns about me smoking, which I thought was unusual because normally they sort of discourage that sort of thing. He knows what I've gone through for the last 18 months too, so maybe he thought that smoking might help me mentally. Now, this is an attitude that we see a lot in the literature that clinicians have. It's too hard to quit smoking. They've got bigger fish to fry. Let's get the mental health thing to baseline, and then we'll start a quit attempt. That's actually quite prejudiced. There may never be a right time from a clinician's perspective to make a quit attempt. It's about what our data suggested from the very small sample size that we had is that internal readiness is far more important than what a clinician might identify as the right time. So it's about when that person is ready to make that attempt. And, they say that every cigarette you don't smoke is, helping you. So even failed quit attempts have a role in, those kinds of prevention and also to give people, some people would say things, I think maybe one or two people said that, they remembered they quit for 3 months once, and so, they could probably do that again. So it was kind of, they were able to sort of draw on those successes. some patients, some consumers expressed to us, I think I saw participants and I was like, oh no, like my brain got a little scrambled, expressed that part of why they had agreed to be in the trial at all was because they wanted to know about the impact of smoking on their bodies, which was really interesting because so much of that information is publicly available. And we even had, so this participant was in the intervention cohort, but we had people in the control cohort who were only given publicly available information, thanking us for linking them into those services, which are supposed to be easily accessible and you know what I mean? So clearly something's going a little bit awry there. But people, you know, they kind of wanted to understand what smoking was doing and how they could, you know, they wanted information that wasn't necessarily easy for them to get in the, you know, in the community. So that also might be, you know, something that clinicians can think about setting people up to have those resources when they feel ready or letting them know they're there before making a quit attempt so that they feel equipped, they feel like they have what they need to move forward. So the other thing we assessed was the efficacy of the intervention. And we found, so this quote, and I'm going to read this before I talk about this, because this was really interesting to me. So it was just nice to speak to someone, you know, I'm on my own, I'm on my isolated, I'm on my own, just nice to speak to somebody, even if it was for a few minutes, nice to have that kind of connection. So the role that clinicians in the quit attempt, so this is talking about the quitline counsellor, is one of social connectedness, which is so interesting to me that that was what it was doing to help. Yeah, and I think, you know, people kind of found it useful to varying degrees. In this cohort, we only had one person, like in the people who were interviewed for 5 and 8 month data, we only had one who sustained a quit attempt from 2 to 8 months. But we had lots of people cut down and lots of people learn more. And so it wasn't so much about quitting as it was about, as it was about learning and, you know, and moving forward and getting that understanding of what was important, I think. Okay, and then there was another slide back here I wanted to talk about. Okay, so this is kind of the main finding from what we did. And that was that hopefulness was so important for people in making and maintaining a quit attempt. Because if people, you know, we're talking about people who kind of had the general characteristics of people living with SMI in the community, so very socially isolated, often living alone, unmarried or divorced, you know, so kind of quite like isolated and, you know, obviously experiencing some feelings of depression and isolation. And so for some of them, they couldn't see a better future for themselves. Like things were so hard for them right then that they couldn't see that their future could be different. And so why would you make an attempt to quit, which is so hard and needs to be maintained over such a long period of time, when you don't believe that a better future is even possible for you? You can get relief from your symptoms immediately by having a cigarette, but you can't get relief, you know what I mean? Like it's, you really have to believe that a better future is possible to maintain that. And it only takes, you know, a minute or like one interaction where there isn't hope for a better future or a non-smoking future, I suppose, for people to, you know, to kind of fall off the wagon. So having that hope was so important. And we think that there might be a role for clinicians and supporters to have that hope. So even when the person might not be able to believe that there's a better future for themselves, and I'm not saying that everyone necessarily believes that, like lots of people, you know, were able to quit, or, you know, not in our study, but like generally. But clinicians can have that hope. You know, like you might not believe that it's possible for you right now, but I believe that when you're ready, it's possible for you. And that's where I want to leave it today. Thank you very much.
Fantastic presentation. While people are formulating a question, I'd just like to say that I think your presentation really clearly shows the benefits of good qualitative research, because it gives us a much deeper dive to understand the hows and whys of why an intervention does or doesn't work, and it helps us shape future interventions so that they can be more targeted and more effective. Was there any questions from the audience? Right up the back, of course. Look, we're getting you extra exercise today. Fantastic. Thank you for doing that run. Go ahead.
Mine's more of a comment, and I've seen a couple of Tessa's talks throughout the symposium, and I wanted to say how wonderful it is to see somebody like you up there on the stage doing your thing and putting us all in our place, I guess. As a carer, I'm a bit of a zealot, and I'm been very pleased to hear what you've had to say because I've learnt a lot.
Oh, thank you. That's so lovely. Thank you so much. I really think that, in research, there's such a opportunity now for consumers to really come through and do proper research, like research that's not kind of, I feel like sometimes that people think that consumer research is like watered down research, but like it's not. It's real research. And I just think that, that's really having a moment right now. And I'm a part of really wonderful teams where I've been so well supported. And it's really a testament, I think, to those teams that, that I'm able to come here and do this work.
And that I agree with. And it's wonderful to see.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, we've just got another question down the front. I'll come grab the mic off you. Try not to turn this into a Jerry Springer session.
Really just another comment. If anyone has an opportunity to be in a research cohort with Tessa, just do it. Just do it. I've been on several now, and they're always an amazing experience, and you learn and you give and you know that what you say is going somewhere. It really is going somewhere.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what, nothing but endorsements and love for you. It's fantastic.
Who else wants to have a go?
Oh, and one more, hang on. Oh, no, there's two more. Oh, we're flying.
I'll start with a comment. Great presentation, but I do have a question. And this applies to Tessa as well as anyone in the room with lived experience. If you want to come up and talk to me about it afterwards as well, that's also welcome. I'm working on a master's project at the moment, and part of my research includes some data collected from mental health consumers who are engaged with community care. And some of my data suggested low levels of participation in health programs, which included smoking cessation support services. And I know you mentioned about the mixed responses and sort of mixed experiences with clinicians' attitudes, but I was wondering if there was anything around sort of attitudes or experiences with health programs that might add some context or explanation for why that might be quite low.
Yeah. Look, I'd really just be speculating. I don't know much about health program engagement. I do know, so like independent from this, I am engaged in like a consumer sport program like myself, like just for fun, because I don't do any exercise unless it's scheduled and there are going to be friends there. And that's like I signed up for that program because it was the only one I knew about that was actually by and for consumers. And for me, it was really about like getting over a lot of like trauma that I had from sort of like, kind of the attitudes that I'd experienced where people were like, oh, she's bad at sport. And, and I think in Australian culture, it can be quite difficult because it's such a sporty culture. So yeah, I mean, I know there's good work on peer engagement in those programs. And I also know, I had a really good chat with Law Edwards who said that, sometimes people won't want to engage because they'll want to get to a certain point. They don't think they're ready. And so they'll be like, well, I'm not ready to be in that program because I'm not, I can't run yet or whatever. But Law was saying that what can make a big difference is saying to people, well, I would like to help you get to there rather than just engage with you once you're there. So I'm not sure that that's helpful, but that's like that's what I know.
Great, thank you. This will have to be our last question, but I'm very sure that Tessa will be happy to take any questions and indeed more compliments.
Yeah.
Post this.
Yeah, how you going, Tessa? My name's Nathan Charles Brown. I'm from Lutruwita, Tasmania, and I'm a Pakana man from down there. So I have to say you've done a great presentation, and I feel like you was talking to me personally because I am a smoker, and I'm a consumer of services, but I'm also a professional, and I'm trying to make things better for all of us in Toowoomba, Tasmania. And regardless whether I'm Aboriginal or not, I suppose my mental health has been such a big thing for me over the last 42 years that recently been diagnosed, again 6 weeks ago, with complex PTSD and bipolar. It makes me think, understand why my life has been the way it's been, and working in multicultural men's business down there and trying to address the barriers that everyone's suffering from, not just Aboriginal or people with illness. I suppose, and the data that's down there, we don't see the data compared to everyone else in Australia. Our data is not recognised when it comes to New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland. So I suppose I do want to connect with you personally and learn to research for my people down there, but also understanding what you guys do over here and making such a difference. And being that I felt like you was directing your presentation to me personally, I feel empowered to say, okay, I want to be able to join some of these groups and benefit myself, but also benefit my people as well. So thank you for that. I just wanted to cheers.
Oh, thank you so much. Fantastic.
Right. Thanks again, Tessa. Round of applause, please.